building the science up and getting it to a place where we really feel validated and where other brands would be comfortable promoting the science and promoting us in partnership with them as a leader in innovation was and still is our biggest push and our biggest effort.
Welcome to Hero Inside the Ingredient Branding Podcast with Tomas Vučurović. In each episode, Tomas will draw from his vast experience as the go-to global ingredient branding expert and will discuss this subject with visionaries and pioneers in the field. How do you go from the zero position as a supplier of a new ingredient to the hero position in demand around the world? Let's find out.
Hello and welcome back to the HeroInside Ingredient Branding Podcast. My name is Tomas Vučurović and I'm the creator and host of this pod, through which we love to share our experiences with the ingredient brand community. In this new episode, I meet Seth Casden from California. He's the CEO of Hologenix LLC, the makers of CELLIANT. CELLIANT is the global leader in infrared performance materials that convert body heat into infrared energy. Power from within is what drives their technology. And that's what I want to discuss with Seth. On one side, about the strength and endurance it takes to build an ingredient brand over 2 decades, but also how their technology enhances wellness through the power of infrared energy. Perhaps you are like me, and when you hear the term infrared, different images come to your mind. Infrared is an electromagnetic energy often associated with remote controls, night vision equipment, or infrared saunas. So let's hear from Seth how CELLIANT is unpacking this technology into bioresponsive infrared materials and how they have inspired over 60 brands to work with them, including powerhouses like Under Armour and Decathlon. Good morning and welcome, Seth. Great to have you on the show. How's life in Southern California? I have to ask that because I lived in San Diego in the late 90s and I still have a deep connection to the area and the California lifestyle.
Thank you, Tomas. Thank you for having me on the show. It's been great down here. We finally have enough rain. The snowpack is up to normal levels, so hopefully we're coming out of the drought.
Good. Before we get into CELLIANT's activities as an ingredient brand, can you explain to our listeners the concept of infrared technology and how you are harnessing and transforming it? As I mentioned in the intro, our listeners may have very different images in their minds when they hear the term infrared.
Yes, thank you for that question. Anything that you can't see with the naked eye lends itself to a lot of questions. Infrared is actually just beyond the visible spectrum, and it's a wavelength of light that has an incredible amount of beneficial properties for the body. And there's this huge spectrum of light that is not visible to our eyes, but is present all the time. And we think about cell phones or radio waves. Sunlight has ultraviolet waves, which are actually harmful. But as you look at longer and longer wavelengths of light, they contain many beneficial attributes. And so CELLIANT is based on the premise of harnessing infrared and what it can do for the body.
Thank you for this explanation. And is this diverse perception a problem for you when you were setting up your brand, and how do you deal with it today? I mean, I've tested some of your products and I really feel positive about the experience I'm having, but I was a bit skeptical at first. Is that a common thing that you hear from your customers or also from consumers, that they are a little bit skeptical at the beginning and then they make kind of a really positive transformation?
Yes, I think that's a fair statement. A lot of times for something new, you're going to naturally have some inherent skepticism, especially if you're being told it's good for you. And so we always appreciate that healthy skepticism. And one of the challenges for us, frankly, is showing people the benefits of, like I said, something that you're not going to see with the visible eye. But when you have the experience of using the product and being able to incorporate it as part of your daily routine, there are more and more benefits that become apparent to the user. And over time, you can really see an improvement either in your performance or your recovery or improved sleep.
If you cannot see it, can you measure it? Do you have certain instruments or technologies by which you can measure that impact?
Absolutely. There are cameras that can see into infrared. If you think about night vision goggles, they're using infrared to measure or to seek out changes in what's heat from the body, for example, can be detected through infrared cameras. And the way that we measure the benefits primarily is through increase in circulation in the body. But measuring infrared itself can be done through emissivity testing and looking at the energy that any given material gives off. Going back to our high school or university chemistry science class, Kelvin is absolute zero. And anything that is warmer than that has its own infrared radiation that it's giving off. So we're actually surrounded by this all the time. And our body's giving off infrared radiation as well. And what CELLIANT does is it adds an additional amount of infrared that creates this benefit. And for people that have heard of infrared saunas, they may be more familiar with this out of the box, so to speak. And that helps make the connection between what you might get in an infrared sauna versus textiles.
Great, that sounds impressive. As you were mentioning your time after college, or when you started to think about the CELLIANT journey, which was more than 20 years ago, can you take us back to those early days and share with us how you got to this story and how it unfolded over these 2 decades? What was it like in the beginning, and kind of, what was some important milestones for you on that journey on, and maybe also you could talk about your biggest learning or your biggest lesson that you have learned in this time.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. It's really been an incredible journey over the last 20 plus years, as you say. In the beginning, for me, it was really something that I was drawn to because the science was fascinating to me. And also, I love working with entrepreneurs, with people that have a passion and a creativity to build something basically from scratch. Uh, the biggest challenges that we had were really validating the science and how do we bring this technology to the mass market, and how do we convince brands that this is something that their customers will want once it's explained to them. And so we really set out on this journey to deliver a proven and tried from a personal standpoint benefit. One of the biggest sort of blind spots I had initially was I realized the technology worked and I understood the value. But when you go to large Fortune 500 billion-dollar brands, you're not going to be able to convince them based on testimonials, however many you may have. And so building the science up and getting it to a place where we really feel validated and where other brands would be comfortable promoting the science and promoting us in partnership with them as a leader in innovation was and still is our biggest push and our biggest effort. It's been something that I think validation is not binary. For some brands, one study is enough, and for other brands, they may not be convinced after 10 studies. So we keep investing in the science and keep developing the research now as we talk today in 2024. There are hundreds of papers on infrared and the benefits. And there, I think, is a much wider acceptance of the science. And it's come a long way. And so, those early days for us were really just perseverance and an unflinching belief in what we were doing and wanting to make the world a better place.
Wow, as with many of those ingredient brand cases, it's an impressive story and also motivation to get it into the market and make it successful. And you came a long way, as you said. And I think today you can proudly say that you are a globally accepted brand by amazing partners. One of your strategic clients is Under Armour, and I think for ingredient brands, it is important to gain or win such anchor clients. What I like there is that you are not in with one product, but you have kind of a range of products, kind of a collection of your own. How did this work out? How did it start? And how have you been able to improve, let's say, your visibility in a range of products?
Well, thank you. You're absolutely correct. It's been very critical for us and to be able to convince and bring on brands that have the bandwidth and reach to reach a wide audience. And with Under Armour, we originally met with them in 2009, and they were very interested in the technology. At that time, I think we had one published study, and they gave us a lot of feedback, a very valuable feedback on what they would like to see us do to get to a place where a partnership would make sense for them. And so it took almost a decade till 2017, 2018, until they were officially on board. And to your point, they really saw the opportunity to make a collection. They launched the Rush collection centered on Celliant, and it gave us a way to reach the consumer that we previously weren't able to. And it is a very wide collection of athletic wear, recovery wear, performance wear. And that journey with them has helped us learn what our ideal brand partners are looking for and how to meet their needs and their requirements. And we really couldn't be happier with that partnership.
Oh, that almost sounds like an episode from our future masterclass where ingredient brand interested companies can understand that it's a marathon and not a sprint. Working for almost a decade with a client to really find the right approach to the market clearly shows that it's not an overnight success. Now, on the other hand, you work with Decathlon, which at the moment is probably the most dynamic and successful sports retailer in the world with more than 1,700 stores worldwide. But Decathlon has always relied heavily on their own brands, and many traditionalists of branding might be a bit critical of such a relationship. What is your answer to that? Why do you collaborate with Decathlon?
That's another great question. And we really, I think, have come to, as an economy or as a global business with innovation, I think the consumers are looking for something more than a flashy name or a slogan. And historically, to your point, a lot of brands have been reticent to partner with third-party technology providers, and they come up with their own sort of labeling of something, and maybe it's gimmicky, maybe it's not. But what I think Decathlon realized was that the consumers value the additional work and expense of partnering with a brand, an ingredient brand that has something that's proven, that's very focused, and that it isn't just a fad or a naming play. And so when Decathlon decided that they would be interested in partnering with us, I think it really validated that consumers want something and are willing to pay for a technology if it's substantiated and if there is a really clear purpose and mission, which we certainly feel we provide.
I mean, I love my ski socks. I immediately got them after the product was released this spring, and I had a few days skiing with them, and I think it makes a difference. And Decathlon also is an amazing company, and I think the way they transformed sports and retail over the last 10, 15 years is remarkable by maybe not targeting the top 1% of performers in each category, but by being also really innovative on new product development. When I just think about camping, I mean, I had really a deja vu when I was a few years ago in Interlaken in Switzerland at the campground, and there is a lot of hardcore outdoor enthusiasts. They go climbing and parachuting and doing all kinds of sports. And then in the afternoon, I walked down the campground, and 80%, 90% of the tents were from the Decathlon brands, and you could see that the top-notch tent makers, there was one tent here and one tent there. So I think they really conquered the middle market and also providing innovative and great products. So a smart move, I would say. Let's go back to your IR technology for a moment, because you communicate a lot about wellness and health. For example, you work together with BlackRoll, and CELLIANT is used in their relaxation blankets for a faster regeneration. That's interesting because you're making here kind of a promise into this health and wellness area. So, how can your innovation contribute in these areas?
Well, the body's main energy expenditure is to maintain our core temperature of 37 C or 98.6. And usually our environment is significantly lower than that temperature. So our body is constantly expending energy and resources to maintain that core temperature. And at any given minute, second, we are emitting about 100 watts of energy. And so if you could plug a light bulb into our head, it would be on 24/7, even while you're sleeping. And so if you think about that energy potential, it's normally wasted or dissipates into the environment. And what Celliant does is it harnesses that energy. The minerals inside Celliant absorb the heat emitted from the body and convert that to infrared and direct it back into the body. And by doing that, it helps the body maintain homeostasis. It helps it maintain its thermal regulation, and it allows the body to better preserve its resources. And if you're looking at a product like Black Roll, where you want to stay warm or you want to recover from exertion, the added minerals and Celliant will allow the body to keep itself in balance. And a lot of times our sleep is disturbed because we're too cold or we're too warm, or we have a pressure point from laying on a side, so we roll over to the other side. Increasing circulation will help counteract or mitigate against all of those and provide a more restful sleep.
I mean, when I think about my family, definitely our Celliant blanket is the number one blanket in the house. So again, all the products that I have used so far really give me that kind of positive experience that you are talking about. Going back to ingredient branding, having anchor clients is important. We mentioned that before. But another success factor is to be able to be present in a wide range of applications. So you're not a one-trick pony that provides, one benefit in one application. You offer a variety of carrier materials such as nylon, RPT, viscose, and your products come in different forms: fibers, yarns, fabric, nonwoven, insulation. And that's very important for a successful sell-in across multiple categories. Um, but it's also important that then your customers are able to create a wide range of products for different purposes and end users. Like we talked about, there's performance apparel, footwear, socks, bedding, recovery blankets, tapes. I saw recently you're doing also these medical tapes, which we can see a lot of athletes wearing them now all the time. Do you see a synergy between all of those applications? And are you already at the point that you have established, I would say, like a Celliant fan base, so that people that are actively demanding your technology in various products for different end users?
That's one of our challenges and our opportunities. And the challenge is that it's difficult to be all things to all people, and it's frankly not possible. On the other hand, because circulation is so foundational to our health and wellness, anything that can help boost that will have a benefit. And so we to your point, we have a very wide offering of materials that brands can use to incorporate into their products. And so that allows for a very diverse offering. We've talked about blankets, we've talked about apparel, sports apparel. We mentioned kinesiology tape, KT tape. There's also applications in transportation, airplanes, trains, automobiles, furniture, office furniture, home furnishings, and anywhere that you incorporate textiles into your life can have this technology. And so as people interact with it, their initial exposure is very varied. For some people, it might be an office chair. For other people, it could be a shirt or a base layer. You mentioned the socks. People that have tried Celliant socks probably get the most immediate reaction. A lot of times our feet get too hot, they get sore if we're on our feet all day. Being the closed environment of a shoe can create sweating and blisters, which leads to odor. So when our customers try Celliant socks and they see their feet stay dry and there's no odor as a result and there's no swelling, when they travel on long haul flights, their feet feel good. They're not hurting at the end of the day. Those tend to be our most committed and evangelical fans. And once somebody has that benefit, that positive experience, it could be with their pets, horses, cats, dogs. We have some incredible testimonials from the owners of animals and what they've experienced with those types of applications. So we have to be as concise as we can in our message to reach the largest amount of people while still giving the flexibility for brands to promote either a performance benefit or a recovery benefit or a sleep benefit. And that does present a challenge.
Yeah, we are encountered very often with these situations. And I think this is when you are at the borderline between being a product with a name and a brand. And the organizations, also often the staff in the companies we work with, they are coming from college or from other jobs, and they are marketing trained. And marketing is all about USP. What it's about differentiation. Everybody wants to be different than the other one, and that's not only externally but also internally. And that's why a lot of our clients, when they approach us, they have too many brands, they have too many names because everybody thinks he needs to be different from the other. And that's probably also your customers are searching for the individual benefit that Celliant is delivering in that application to that specific end user. And now starts the brand job, and that is to find the common denominator between all of those activities and to really harvest that what all of those products and technologies have together and start to build a relationship with your audience, because that is the difference between a brand and a product, right? You might love a product, but you build a relationship with a brand and not with a product. And I think that is what also distinguishes many what I call branded ingredients from the few ingredient brands. And the difference is that the ingredient brands have been able to establish a relationship with an audience that they are nurturing above and beyond what their products are doing.
That's very well said. What I was going to add was differentiation, just for the sake of differentiation, doesn't help, and creating a multitude of brand names doesn't help either. And so, for us, we're really trying to drive home the point that we want to build that relationship, and it's not about a specific product, and we're trying to create a user experience so that when our customers are using products that contain Celliant, they are really doing something that has a clear goal in their life, and that's to make them more comfortable and feel that they're doing the best that they can, whatever the circumstance of any given day are. We're all going to have good days and bad days. The concept that we can create a passive benefit simply by getting in bed with Celliant sheets and then waking up in the morning and putting on Celliant clothes is something that I think takes time and takes a lot of effort. Really, our brand partners carry that message to the consumers, and the opportunity at the end of the day is to create an experience where people are seeking out the best of the materials that they use. So it's not just a fashion statement or how it feels, but it's actually, what is this product doing for the body and for the human physiology.
And they will most likely associate it only with one brand per, let's say, category or feature or material. So it's also very important that you have this clear number one position for infrared technologies, because then the people won't do the extra effort to learn another one. Then you are booked for these kind of performances. One word about your marketing efforts, because I read your story about Tom Brady, that you have met him and how your products helped him to perform. So celebrity endorsement can be an important part of brand building. Do you also have kind of a Celliant brand ambassador network of people who tell their stories, and what are the other key marketing activities to build brand awareness and demand?
Yes, that's something that obviously having a spokesperson like Tom Brady, who we were able to leverage through his relationship with Under Armour, is fantastic, and it becomes aspirational when there's leading figures, whether it's sports or celebrity endorsements. As an ingredient brand, for us, the majority of our resources are invested in the science, the validation, and the different materials, developing a cellulose or a nylon or whatever the case may be, insulation. So we're really looking to seed the market with influential people that we can reach. We're not able to write large checks to people just to endorse our brand, or brands that work with Celliant. And really, I think that the best endorsement are the non-paid ones, where people are talking about something because of the effect, because of the benefit they're experience. But at the same time, it's wonderful to be able to leverage the spokespeople for the brands that we work with. The consumer facing brands have a much higher, frankly, budget and a vision for how to create and lift their brand. And we're very fortunate to be able to benefit from that.
Great. Seth, I have you on this podcast for two reasons. Obviously, this amazing story of CELLIANT and your infrared technology, which we've learned now a lot about. But you are also a passionate advocate of ingredient branding, and both you personally and your team at CELLIANT, you're doing a lot of educational work for that model, which makes me very happy because sometimes I feel like Don Quixote, fighting against the windmills to get more attention for ingredient branding. What is your personal motivation? Why do you believe in the power of ingredient branding?
That's something that I think as I've gone on this journey, it's really evolved, and I've learned a great deal. Uh, I think at first I was probably overly enthusiastic that we had something that everybody would want to work with. And maybe I didn't really estimate or understand the amount of work that needed to be done, whether it's from a regulatory standpoint or a materials standpoint or a validation standpoint. But fundamentally, going back to what we were talking about earlier, I think brands really recognize that it's a two-part equation. The brand needs to create the image and the sort of vibe around what product they're making, and at the same time, consumers are much more discerning. There is, so many options as we've talked about, as you mentioned, and so for brands to really be able to create a differentiation in that marketplace, it's not just about a great ad campaign or even the hand feel or the style of a product, because there's so many brands that can compete in those areas. And it really is becoming about the partnerships that these brands make with their suppliers, with their ingredients, to create a story that is beyond just what their core competency is. And certainly we've learned that if you try and have too many offerings or too many distinctions among your core competency, the message can get lost. And so we really want to, and what drives me and what I'm passionate about is delivering this opportunity to brands to actually raise their profile and raise their visibility and provide something to their consumers and their customers that's unique and at the same time rewarding.
Wow, that's really admirable. Also, the faith and motivation you've shown to take that technology that is not so easy to explain and turn it into a ingredient brand. Really, an amazing journey. As always, at the end of our podcast, I have a little ritual with my guests, and the first point is I would like to know if you have a specific question or challenge that you have encountered during your ingredient branding process that you would like to discuss.
Yes, I love that question because we try and focus on what works as a society, but I think the biggest knowledge is in what didn't work, and that's really where you learn. And I joke with my friends and colleagues that if I took this idea to a typical MBA program as an idea for a business, I'd probably flunk, because the number one sort of rule is you build a product to meet a demand. And when we started, people weren't going into stores asking for infrared clothing or asking for infrared bedding. And so, my passion and my motivation was really that once people hear about this, they're going to want it, and they're going to really need it and want to have it in their lives. And as we've decided that the best way to make that vision a reality is by partnering with brands that already had an audience and already have customers, and lean on them to tell the story. The universal demand is always for innovation and for, like we've talked about, USP. But when you get in these conversations, there's this pushback around price and pricing, and it's this catch 22 where brands want innovation, they want a new story to tell, but the party line is they can't afford a price increase. But the consumer, you and I know that if something really does provide a benefit, of course, we'll be willing to pay a little bit more. It can't be 2x or 3x, but to be able to really improve my own performance and speed my recovery, or have a better night's sleep, I'm willing to pay a few extra dollars for that. And I think the biggest challenge and one of the biggest obstacles we faced is that there's this huge pushback around any type of price component with adding the technology. And that's something we're still working through and showing brands case studies where our partners have increased price and seen sales actually go up.
Great point. And we, as you can imagine, are discussing that in every project, with every client. And I can tell you a few things about that. The first precondition, and that might sound like a surprise to you, but we realize that it's very important that your own organization understands and believes in the value of your innovation. Number one. And number two, that they're also able to communicate that value to all partners in your demand chain. And if companies coming out of the typical role of a supplier, they don't know how to talk about value. They don't know how to talk about more partners in the demand chain. They also are not used to say no to anybody. They're saying yes to everything because they're a supplier. And why are they a supplier? Because the market participants, including maybe end users or consumers, are not aware of their technology. And if I don't know your technology and I don't know that your brand is the source of innovation, then I'm also not able to appreciate it. Because one thing is certain: the brands, they own the interface with the consumer, and they will do everything to sell your innovative technology as their own. And that's why I'm also convinced that the ingredient brand model doesn't work without creating a pull function for your technology. No matter if the big brands help you to generate awareness, but the attractiveness, it's your job. You need to work on building up the attractiveness of your technology and starting to build your own audience, which must maybe not be everybody, but at least I would say the influencers in that category in which you want to go in.
That's a great summary of sort of the challenges of the business model, Thomas. We've seen it when it has worked. We've seen it when it hasn't worked. And to your point, it's always starting kind of behind the block when you're a supplier and the partner, the brand, just wants to be able to purchase whatever you're offering and say thank you. And they're not looking for feedback on how to tell the story or how to market it or what to price it at. And if a brand is sort of curious, but they're not really committed, and so they just try a very small offering, when the marketing ad dollars are then allocated and they look at the size of the program, then there's no marketing money behind that because it's a small program, and then it doesn't do well and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you really need a brand partner that has a vision, that's willing to sort of take a chance, and it's a calculated risk, and it's based on the belief that the consumer actually is going to want and respond positively to what's being offered. And when brands have embraced that, we've seen tremendous success.
Absolutely. I mean, selling in your technology into a customer is not success. Success is when those products successfully sell. And then you get repurchase, and then you get a relationship with your client, and then you build a collection, and then you are in there for the mid or long term. And that's the name of the game, so to say. Seth, with you, we had now 4 amazing and visionary business leaders in our podcast. So the other little exercise is that you would recommend us a new guest for one of the future episodes. Do you have anybody that you would recommend here?
I do. We have a phenomenal board of managers, board of directors at Hologenix, and Julian Bourne was recently appointed CEO at HiQ for the Aonic offering, and they have launched a cellulose filament fiber, where previously cellulose was really only offered as a fiber that could be made into a spun yarn. So I think Julian would be a great guest to have, and I'm really excited about what IQ is doing, and I think that he would be a great resource for your listeners.
Oh, thank you for that input. For sure, that's great. And if you can help us to reach out to Julian, we will get in touch with him. You gave a pretty technical description again of what they are doing on a product side. It will be also interesting to discuss with him the brand part and the relationship part and what their journey looks like here. So thank you so much, Seth, for all of your insights into CELLIANT, a global ingredient brand that amplifies energy to help your consumers to perform stronger, recover faster, and sleep better. And once again, a big thank you to you personally and the CELLIANT team for being ingredient brand ambassadors and helping to spread the word.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. We really appreciate what you're doing to help validate ingredient branding and how critical it is for the success of brands worldwide.
This was the 4th episode of the HeroInside Ingredient Branding Podcast with Seth Casden, the CEO of Hologenix LLC, the makers of CELLIANT. What an amazing story to hear from Seth, how they introduced something completely new and invisible that wasn't demanded by the market. And then the learning curve they had to take until that point where more than 60 brands worldwide are demanding their products. Absolutely stunning. To share your insights and questions for this episode, head over to our Brand LinkedIn page and join the conversation. The link will be posted in the show notes too. Subscribe to the Hero Inside podcast to be sure not to miss our upcoming episode. Until then, keep exploring, learning, and being a hero in your journey towards a better world.
This has been an episode of Hero Inside the Ingredient Branding Podcast with Tomas Vučurović. Each episode features stories and wisdom from game-changing creators and the shapers of the world's most exciting and influential ingredient brands. To learn more about ingredient branding and Tomas's work, visit brained.co. That's BRAIND.co. Until next time.